a combined gross domestic product of 138.8 trillion South African rands, an estimated combined foreign reserves of $4 trillion US dollars, 4 top emerging economies and the gateway to Africa, an economic bloc of note that creates unprecedented opportunities for business. That is BRICS. It is within this context that we host this PBF BRICS Colloquium, where we bring together the two main builders and the players that are needed to make it work, that is business and government, to explore the challenges and opportunities that this initiative brings, to focus on promoting intra-BRICS trade and people-to-people contact. That is the objective we set for this dialogue. Thank you very much for being with us. It's now my pleasure to call on my co-convener, Mr. Renier Skuman, to make the welcoming remarks. Renier.
Thank you, Darryl. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And at the outset, I would really want to welcome you all to this, which is the second Progressive Business Forum, BRICS Colloquium, that we have held in less than a year, the last one being, as many of you will recall, in the middle of last year in Johannesburg. We believe within the PBF that this event has found its niche as a pre and a parallel event, which brings what we would describe as a politically significant perspective to this hugely significant multilateral structure known as BRICS. Our colloquium creates, we believe, a strategic platform for engagement between business and government policymakers of note from many sectors and from many countries. We saw in June 2012 at our last colloquium, and we full well expect to see again today, that the interstate structure known as BRICS is given further economic content as an undisputed relevance in a broadly based partnership approach. And that is why we, as Progressive Business Forum of the ANC, will continue to try to play a role of support for the BRICS project here in South Africa, as well as in the international and the global context. Which leads me to welcoming you all here today very sincerely, and to thank you for your participation. And I do so on behalf of our Treasurer General and Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, who is unfortunately still in Johannesburg and will be joining us later. And when I welcome you on his behalf, he is our host today, even in absentia, but he is also, very importantly, the ANC Treasurer General and the political head of the Progressive Business Forum as a structure in the African National Congress. Regarding our keynote speaker, the Honorable Maite Nkoana-Mashabane, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. And if you got up early enough this morning, you would have seen her on television at a breakfast explaining all kinds of, and responding to all kinds of questions and discussions very early on in the day. But I want to say to you, ladies and gentlemen, she is a highly valued friend of the Progressive Business Forum and has never turned us down when we invite her or need her advice, for which we sincerely would like to thank you, Minister. And today, ladies and gentlemen, I don't think in this country there has been such a hive of international diplomatic activity on one day, or in a week, as much as we are experiencing this week. But in spite of that, when this minister and her department are in the eye of the organizational storm, in a week of unprecedented importance and demands on her time, she has joined us today. And I want us to join me again in thanking her for that. Ladies and gentlemen, we have amongst our guests Dr. Rob Davies, who is addressing the next session. I see we have also Deputy Minister Marius Fransman and Deputy Minister Elizabeth Tabeta, Deputy Minister Fransman from DIRCO, and of course Deputy Minister Elizabeth Tabeta from Trade and Industry. And I also recognize the Member of Parliament Joan Fubbs, who is the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee of Trade and Industry. Our other special guests will be welcomed in the relevant sessions or when they join us, but I would want to just welcome them at this point already collectively. I would be failing in my duty if I did not welcome on stage two members of the BRICS Business Council, the chairman of the council, Mr. Patrice Motsepe, and another senior business member, Dr. Iqbal Surve, both of whom will address us shortly. And I would like you to join me in congratulating them on their appointments to this council as very prominent members of our business community. So congratulations. We also have a number of ambassadors and high commissioners, including the BRICS countries, some of whom will speak later, like the ambassador of Brazil and other embassy and high commission representatives. And I also recognize the ambassador of the European Community, Ambassador Roland van der Geert, to name but a few. Then, of course, we have business people from other, mainly BRICS countries. To them we say a big thank you for coming as well and being prepared to meet and engage with the people we have brought together here from many different parts of the country. I would also, in welcoming our friends from South Africa who have traveled also from all over the country to be here, I would also recognize in particular our sponsors. In case you have any doubt as to who they are, just look around you. They have been supportive of this project, and they have, through their support, made it possible for us to create this opportunity. Like you, by your presence, have made a contribution to making our collective business projects better in many, many ways, for which we thank you. So with these few words, I welcome you warmly. We trust you will find the time with us today fruitful and profitable and worthwhile. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Renier. I'd now like to call on Dr. Iqbal Surve. He's the founder and chairman of the Second Jala Group, and as Renier has mentioned, is also a South African nominated member of the BRICS Business Council. Dr. Surve.
The Honourable Minister of Trade and Industry, Rob Davies, and Honourable Minister Mashabane of DIRCO, and the Deputy Ministers Fransman, Tabiti, very many other distinguished guests, and I want to use a very familiar South African saying, all protocol observed. It's a real privilege to be able to say a few words here this morning. I know that the Business Council meets later on, and I want to acknowledge the presence of the Chairman of the Business Council, good colleague and friend, Patrice Motsepe, that's sitting right here as well, and he'll obviously say a few words. I also want to welcome our colleagues from the other BRICS countries. I see lots and lots of friends and lots of business colleagues here today, and I'm looking forward from our side as a South African business leader, as a member of the BRICS Council, to engaging with you in a mutually beneficial way for our businesses and for our countries. I guess I've been asked to say a few words about Africa, the new frontier, and why African business is on the verge of an amazing threshold, why Africa is about to explode in a very positive way. I think it was not long ago that the Economist magazine had a headline which said, Africa, the dark continent. And I think some of you may in fact remember that. And many people wrote to the Economist at the time and said, you know, that's not a true reflection of the African continent. Just last week, I think it was, or just about over a week ago, the Economist had another headline saying, Africa, the aspiring continent. And I think that truly reflects what has transpired during the time of the first article of The Economist and today. So what is it that we as business leaders see on the African continent that gives us so much confidence to do business on the continent? And I guess for many of my African colleagues, what I'm going to say is known to you. But for many members of the BRICS countries and business leaders, I'd like to give you some insight as to why we believe that the African continent is the continent of the future, and why we believe that it's a new frontier of investment and offers really good opportunities. I think there are a number of factors which have shaped the African continent over the last couple of couple of years. The first is that I think by and large the continent has been seeing increasing democracy, it's been seeing increasing peace on the continent, and lots of other good political reasons driven by various presidents and countries. But from a business point of view, Africa has experienced a technological revolution. The advent of technology and the access to technology has made access to business opportunities easier. And I think we must not underestimate the impact of technology on the continent, both technology in terms of communications, in terms of media, and various other areas. That single event has seen African entrepreneurs emerge. So technology has been a very significant enabler to allow African business people to participate rightfully in the development of the continent. I think secondly, we've seen African literacy increase and more skilled people coming back to Africa. The African diaspora is in fact being reversed. So we're seeing people that have got the capacity to manage, to become entrepreneurial, and to use the skills that were formerly lost to Africa in other parts of the world. And that is very important to establish business partnerships between the BRICS countries, to know that African people that with skills that formerly used to be primarily in the north and in the west have now come back to our continent and are contributing towards the development of the continent. I think there's a third reason, and that is that there's been huge infrastructure spent on the African continent over the course of the last decade or so. In fact, the very Economist article remarked that previously, if you had driven in Africa in about 24 countries, which the author had driven to, perhaps 20% of the roads would have been tarred. His experience in this instance was that 90% of the roads were tarred. And that is very significant, because if you're able to build the infrastructure, you're able to enable business to work with each other, you're able to develop opportunities, you're able to bring products and services to people. So Africa is experiencing this huge growth of infrastructure. I think if we look at a couple of other factors which have contributed towards this, very little trade takes place within Africa. But increasingly now, in fact, it is said that somewhere between 17% and 25% of African trade takes place between Africans themselves. Now, this is, of course, unacceptable. And it's our responsibility to make sure that African trade increases with Africa itself, but also that African trade increases with the BRICS countries. So I think these factors are contributing to a newfound confidence in Africa, a newfound spirit of entrepreneurship, business development, GDP growth. I'm not going to give you all the great statistics about how Africa's GDP has grown, but I can tell you that the one continent that is well placed for enormous growth for demographic reasons, with the youngest people that will be literate by 2050 in the world, is in fact the African continent. So it is the continent that you want to engage business partners. It is the continent that you want to share some of the experiences. And to my BRICS colleagues, some of you have had exceptional growth in your countries, and we know that, and we appreciate that. It'll be wonderful if you could share that particular model, that growth, and partner with African businesses on our continent. Not just South African businesses, but African businesses on our continent. I guess I just want to say a few more words before concluding. And that is that in the past, business relations on the African continent were not based on the business of being equal. Business relationships were not based on cultural sensitivities to who we are. And business relationships were not based on the fact that Africans themselves can contribute to their continent and can contribute in an equal measure and have all the necessary skills and abilities to engage in business and other practices. I think our responsibility, my colleague Patrice and I in particular, and my other colleagues on the Business Council, our responsibility is to make sure that the kind of business that we encourage between the BRICS countries and our African colleagues is one which is different, is one which is culturally sensitive, is one which is an enabler, and is one which allows for the growth of the entire African continent. I think we are at a very exciting stage in the development of our continent. We have the real possibility to actually eradicate poverty in the next 15 to 20 years on this continent. I think we can do so. We have abundant resources. We have fantastic people. I know there's something that you would have noticed to all our friends and colleagues from the BRICS countries. You would have noticed the amazing hospitality of our people and how friendly Africans are. I think you'll find that in business, we are good partners. In business, we are as friendly. In business, we want to achieve for our people, for our development of our continent, to help overcome poverty, to help overcome other issues, but most importantly, to give our young people the aspirational hope that they can achieve what many of you have achieved in your countries as well. I want to conclude with, I think it's quite appropriate because it's been a long time since the Pope with Pope Francis. And I always reminds me of what St. Francis of Assisi used to say. You know, he said, in life, do what is necessary, and then you do what is possible. And if you do that, you'll do what is impossible. I think with the BRICS concept, with the BRICS structure, we have the possibility to do the impossible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Surve. It is now my absolute honor and pleasure to call on a very good partner of the Progressive Business Forum, but also the founding chairman of BRICS and the executive chairman of African Rainbow Minerals, Mr. Patrice Motsepe, to address us. And he will be talking to us on a business perspective.
Thank you so very, very, very much. You know, the South African flag is very special, you know, as well as all of those other flags. Let me thank all of you, and a very special welcome to all of our friends from the BRICS countries and South African business. We do indeed have a very, very special relationship, a historic relationship with each of the BRICS countries. And when I was looking, I saw some of our most outstanding, most experienced and businessmen in South Africa who've contributed towards the growth and development of other businessmen, but who are also leading us in increasing our trade ties with BRICS countries, but also the partnerships we are trying to establish on the African continent. I'm going to make a few remarks because Iqbal and I will be leaving at 2:30 for a meeting of the first meeting of the BRICS Business Council. And I thought we benefit immensely from always getting the benefit of our input from all of our ministers, and in this context, Minister Maite. So I'm going to keep my remarks briefly so that I can have the benefit of her input. But just so that I can conclude my protocol, Minister, it's wonderful to have you here, and you do such wonderful work in your department. And I remember the young Maite, she's still very young, but I'm talking about the much younger one who I met in India. I mean, we had just established our South Africa-India Business CEOs Forum, and I mean, the energy and the information and the passion with which he was leading our country, as well as giving us educational information and advice has stood us in great stead, and we're very grateful to that, Minister. And Minister Rob Davies, thank you so much. I remember I think a few years ago, we were in India, and the Minister and I, you know, there are times when you have to focus on your company, the company that employs you, and the growth and promotion of your business, which is very important. All of us must do that. But on platforms like these, you know, when I serve and all of us serve on a business council, it is about South Africa. It is about Africa. And that is absolutely important. And we're also learning that increasingly we have to engage with our government to get exposed to what they see, where they are taking our country, the challenges they see, so that the promotion and advancement of our business interests and the business in South Africa, business in Africa, is really in line with the broader governmental and diplomatic initiatives. So Minister Davis at one of our meetings in India pulled me aside and said, "Patrice, but you can't say this." And after he explained to me, because we had a meeting of the CEOs and we had wonderful ideas, but he gave us advice on issues which really indicated that in that context, the pursuit and the discussions that we had concluded would not advance the broader South African and the continental interests. And it's always very useful to engage and discuss and get guidance. And then finally, Deputy Minister and my brother Iqbal, Renier and Daryl, uitstekende werk, en my broer ook Frans, is altyd goed om je te zien. Let's get to the few things I want to raise in relation to the BRICS Business Council. And of course, trade within BRICS and the fundamental importance in relation to Africa. You see, you are business people, and there are many meetings that we've held over many, many years, and sometimes you leave a meeting of this nature and you ask yourself, what have I benefited? What is new that I've learned, and how have I promoted and advanced the businesses that I'm associated with? So we have a clear understanding that from a big BRICS Business Council perspective, and also particularly from South Africa's perspective, there will be an ongoing, and I'll say a little bit more about this tomorrow, there'll be an ongoing extensive engagement with all of you. At least once a year we want to have a broad plenary where each South African entrepreneur, big and small, each South African company can have the opportunity to come and share with us how can the BRICS Business Council be of benefit, add value, position you aggressively in your businesses, and facilitate greater trade, greater investments, greater partnerships with your business, because in that context, it is about your business and the companies you're associated with and the companies that employ you. How can we significantly increase, significantly accelerate